Hi, and welcome back to the Blue Screen Brothers. This episode is a continuing of the application registration me and
Oh
Marius
yeah, we
have done.
haven't even got
Uh,
to enterprise applications yet.
no,
So
no, not even near. But this is the secret episode,
yes, this is top secret.
top secret and certificate episode. Yeah.
Yeah.
So don't tell your friends about this episode. It's secret.
Yes, that's correct. So certificates and secrets. Let's talk a bit about them. So up until now, we haven't needed any secrets at all. We have signed in with so-called implicit flow, which where under authentication here, you will actually see that these are also called public flows, meaning that they work fine for like public pages like jot.ms. But we have many other use cases. So many people have seen this certificates and secrets, and this is crucial when working with app registrations. So let's first talk about what this is. So certificates and secrets on app registrations essentially is a way for your apps or APIs to prove that they are who they say they are. So it's a good old-fashioned password, at least certificates and client secrets are. We'll talk about federated credentials too. So when I want to, let's say, access Azure, I want to deploy something in Azure or something, I can use the service principal. And what you authenticate with when you have a service principal is one of these certificates and secrets. That in the combination with the client ID. So essentially, when you have this client ID value and the value of a client secret, for example, and the tenant ID, that's the three things that you need to authenticate. And what permissions will you get? Well, that depends a bit on the API that you are requesting. So let's try this out a bit. So I'm going to show a bit first, and then we can talk a bit more in detail. So
Just a quick question then, because
yes,
we have been talking about app registration, and suddenly now you're talking about service principles. What's the connection between those two?
yeah, we have a separate episode about that. But the thing is that we have an app registration, which is our definition. We have a single definition of our app. So, for example, all the URLs we've been looking at and things like that, that is sort of the technical definition and how we need to sort of integrate our app. However, when we actually start using the app or anything useful, then we need to have an instance of that definition. And that's the service principal. And the service principal, for example, in the app that we have now, will exist in two tenants because it's a multi-tenant app that has been used in two different tenants. They will both have a service principal, which is also an enterprise app. So an enterprise app is a service principal. It's a type of service principal essentially. Okay. And that is the instance of our app. Look at our other episode about that for even more details.
Yeah.
So what I can do now is that I can actually look at my API permissions. So here we have user read as a delegated permission. That means that I need a user account to sign in, because delegated is for user accounts only. And that means that my app will get a token sort of on behalf of the user. However, when we add permissions here, and for example, choose Microsoft Graph or any other API for that matter, but let's stick to Graph for now. we will also have the option of choosing application permissions. And this is, well, it says actually here, your application runs as a background service or a daemon without a signed-in user. That sounds like something we would want to do. So let's choose some permission and let's grab user read all. So all permissions are on the scope. What type of object are we talking about? What permission and what scope? So user read all means, of course, that you read all users. I think that's quite logical.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have a gazillion different permissions
So the
here
main
because
difference
Microsoft
now
Graph is very extensive.
From the delegated, we had a user read, and then you will read only yourself, but user read all, then the application can read from all the users.
Yes, that is correct. And now you will see the same thing that we've seen before, not granted. So here as well, we will need to grant an admin consent. And that can happen in multiple tenants and everything. So yeah, we'll dig into that as well. But let's stick in our good workaround dev tenant for now. So we have given it user read all. We have a secret, but I don't know the value. So let's create a new one, test or something. So now we have a new value as well. And this will stay visible until I navigate out from the app registration view. And what we need is this client ID, tenant ID, and the secret. So I prepared a very easy PowerShell for working with it, but you can work with any kind of method for sending HTTP requests. So the thing is that let's now first, I've already populated the client ID, tenant ID, and client secret. So let's open PowerShell. Let's not actually take PowerShell 5. Let's take a proper PowerShell like this. So now that we have our values, and I don't care if you have my client secret because it only has user read. First of all, we need a URI. So our URI will be this token endpoint. So we talked, or in our previous 2 episodes, we have used the authorization endpoint, and that is interactive, meaning that it will display a UI essentially. However, the token endpoint will not do that. That's more of a REST API essentially. It takes some inputs and returns some outputs. And we can also build a body. So let's have a look at the body like this. So I've added scope equals Microsoft blah, blah, blah /.default. So this is the same thing that we've used in the previous episode. Graph Microsoft.com /.default. And that means that, again, we will try to get all permissions that we have available for Microsoft Graph. I could here actually say user.read.all, and it will only get that even though I have more permissions. Then we have added our client ID. So we tell Entra ID, this is the username essentially, if we were to sort of do it with the user, but here's the client ID instead. We say grant type client credentials. And what does that mean? Well, it means that we're signing in as an application rather than as a user. So we have already seen grant types of where we sign in with an implicit flow, where we have a user and we get an access token sent through the browser. This is completely different. So by sending this, we say that we are signing in with a client ID and a client secret or a certificate. And then we add the client secret value. And this is just sent not in plain text, but through HTTPS to Entra ID. So let's just send that as a post. Boom. So that successfully was sent, and we can look at our reply. So in the reply, we will see that we got something back. We got a token type, that's bearer. So what we actually got back was the JSON format, but the PowerShell is nice to us. So this is what the reply actually looks like on an HTTP level. So we get this token type of bearer. And that means that this is supposed to be provided as a bearer token. We get this expires in. So this is just some seconds. And we get the access token itself. So let's have a look at this access token, because this, again, this starts on this EY and stuff that we have seen previously. So let's copy it, access token, set clipboard. This is a nice trick for whoever didn't know that. So let's go to jot.ms and paste it. So as you can see, the format is the same thing as when we signed in as a user. You had a header, a payload, and a signature. And when we go here, we don't see any UPN or display name of the user or anything. We still see an issuer, for example, which is our tenant. But here we can actually see that this now is an app, and we have user read all as a role. So the sort of the use or the token itself is the same thing. It's a JOT, and we can send this to the Microsoft Graph. And you can tell that from the audience here that this is a access token that is for the Microsoft Graph, and no other service should accept this than Microsoft Graph. So this is where we can start to send a request to the Microsoft Graph. So I always use PowerShell, but you can use Postman or whatever. So we can do invoke REST method. We can say HTTPS graph microsoft.com/v1.0/users. We need some header where we say authorization equals bearer and the value that we have, inside our access. No, what did I call it? Token. .access token. Access token is empty. There it is. So by providing this header, authorization header with a bearer and then space and the access token itself, I actually get a response from Microsoft Graph. I can put it into a variable. I can use it for whatever. I can say select just the display name, and I will get my users from Microsoft Graph by using this access token. So if I want to add more permissions to the access token, we can actually try that. So let's try to send a new request, requesting groups instead. No, insufficient privileges. And that's of course natural because we only have user read all. So if we were to get that going, we would need to add more permissions essentially. So I can add a permission. Let's take group, read all, like this, and then grant admin consent. So now we have granted that permission.
But then you need a new access token, right?
And that was my question. You ruined it.
Yeah.
And that is the thing, because if I were to do this now, this still doesn't work. And this is the beauty of OpenID Connect, because the Microsoft Graph doesn't care about the fact that I have granted group read all in Entra ID. it only looks at the token that I sent. And I haven't gotten a new token. So the token is still this here with user read all. So if I got Microsoft's certificate and we're able to create this signature myself, then I can actually create my own jot, add privileged role, read write all or something, and be able to get access to everything. But of course, I don't have that certificate. That would be a very bad thing. So the Microsoft Graph just looks at the roles. It looks at that the signature is actually valid and stuff, and then grants you that permission. So if I were to now get a new access token, like this, so now I send the same request. So I can take this token, .access token, and set clipboard, and now paste it here. We will see that this roles claim has been expanded with group read all. So do you think it works now?
No, it should work.
Voila.
Yeah.
P.value.select display name or something. And here are my groups. So I
but
actually
one question
now,
there: if you now go back and revoke the permission, you will still get the groups, right?
yes.
Yeah,
And
so
that is
that's
true. So if I now revoke admin consent and even remove the permission and everything, then if I were to do this again, it still works. So it's both ways. Yeah,
it's a little bit different if you use the permissions on your local Active Directory. It will work instantly, right? But in here, it's the token that decides, not the permission itself. So you need to be sure when it's an application, you need to make sure that your application are secure itself. So not based too much on the access token.
Correct. And if we'll so what if I then just keep this value? So I store this in a file, and can I then access your environment forever, Olav?
No, you had some 3,599 seconds, maybe it was, when you created the token.
So yes, so you will see here that I have this these three values here, where you can see when it was created. You can see not before, where it should not be valid before this, and the expiry. So these are like Unix timestamps for when things expire. And is it 2032 where things go haywire with Unix timestamp? I think so.
In some time,
yeah.
But can you revoke this token?
So you have a few options in some standards now, where you have this CAE, what's this stand for again? Continuous access evaluation. So through this method, it is possible to revoke access tokens, but essentially no. So what you can revoke is refresh tokens, because the thing is that this token is never actually sent to Entra ID again. So when I show this value to Microsoft Graph, then Microsoft Graph will simply look at the signature. It will actually look at the issuer, find this well-known thing, and we showed that in a previous episode, where you have this well-known OpenID configuration, and you can find the JAWS endpoint containing the key, so it can actually verify that the signature is valid. And as long as it's valid and the access token is within expiry, it isn't expired, then access is granted. But through this CAE feature, you have options to implement expiry of access tokens as well, where you will get essentially just webhooks from Entra ID saying that this is now expired. But that's a rather advanced scenario, to be honest.
So it's nothing you use in a common day work. So yeah.
No. So you would rely on this, which will be 1 hour. And then after that 1 hour, you will then rely on a refresh token instead. And the refresh token can also be used. I think we're going to have like a separate episode just on authorization code flow, just to sort of show another place where a client's secret is used. Because now we showed, or we authenticated to Entra ID as our app to get a token for the Microsoft Graph. Of course, the token could also be for Exchange Online or other APIs. But the same client secret is also used in one of the authentication flows called authorization code flow, at least if you do not use one of the other features. So we'll have a separate episode on that. Let's talk a bit more about certificates and secrets.
Yeah.
So secrets, they are the worst kind that you have here. That is sort of the least secure one, because, for example, you can be an idiot and have a PowerShell open with variables in them and get them typed on screen. For example, here I have a secret. I don't know even what this is for. That could be something that is crucial. It isn't, but it could be. And because this is the secret that we're working on, right? But the thing is that you could be an idiot and record a YouTube video putting this secret on screen, and people can use it.
Yeah.
Right. And that is very easy with a secret because it's short, it's just text, and it's not good, to be honest. You have two other options. So let's just click delete on these immediately, and then you viewers cannot access my environment. So we have two other options. Certificates, that is way more secure. And the main reason is actually just that it's more difficult to handle, to be perfectly honest. It's still possible to check in a PFX file with a private key and no password and everything. Perfectly possible. But it's just a bit more difficult to handle, and people tend to put them into key vaults and do more secure handling of them.
And at least you will not leak it through a YouTube video, right? So.
Exactly. So I can now actually add a certificate if I think I have one, don't I? Yeah, I have this one. So here I can add the certificate. And now this certificate can actually be used to instead of my client's secret. So you have to sign it with a private key and things, but fairly straightforward. I think I have a blog post on it. Good workaround. Client certificates. That's just, yeah. So you have an option of doing that with a key vault and everything. So look at that if you want the details on that. But you achieve the same thing. You prove to Entra ID that you have some secret for the app or a certificate, and you will be able to get, for example, an access token to Microsoft Graph or another API. And then you have this federated credentials. So that is the newest addition here. And this isn't commonly used for regular web applications and stuff. but it's used, for example, for GitHub Actions and Azure DevOps pipelines. So here, for example, you have this GitHub Actions deploying Azure resources. So you can link it to a certain branch or environment and things. And what is actually happening here is that you're adding a trust, so that your app, rather than having a secret, just have a trust to GitHub. But it could also be any third-party OIDC provider except Entra ID, actually, because Microsoft don't want you to do this cross-tenant, apparently. So and that's interesting, but I sort of understand why they do that. So you can add any federated OIDC provider and essentially send JOT from that to get a JOT from Entra. It's not as complex as it sounds like. I have blog posts on both GitHub and Azure DevOps using this, because this eliminates any secret and certificate that will expire. So, for example, when I add a client secret here, I can only choose between 3 and 24 months. And that means that when I leave the company in 12 months and this expires after 18, then maybe I didn't document that well enough. So things will stop working. So both certificates and client secrets must be handled properly. Well, federated credentials as well. But it solves some issues where you no longer have to worry about those expiries, at least. So use them if you can, especially in your deployment pipelines and things, both in DevOps and GitHub. So yeah, that was a bit about certificates and secrets. And I think the next episode will talk about authorization code flow, just because it's interesting to see how that works.
Yeah, perfect. So we will see you in the next episode then.
Yes. Cheerio.
Perfect. Cheerio.